The sun was slowly dropping behind the red mountains when Elias Ward began his long ride back toward his small ranch. The desert looked calm from a distance, but Elias knew it could turn dangerous in a moment. Dry winds pushed sand across the open ground, and the sky held a dusty orange glow that meant night was coming soon. Elias had spent most of the day checking on his cattle, counting each one carefully, because a hungry cougar had been seen nearby earlier in the week. He was tired, thirsty, and ready to get home before darkness covered everything. Elias was used to being alone. He had lived out in the open lands of Arizona for almost 10 years. Life on a ranch was simple but hard, and he did nearly all the work by himself. Sometimes he did not speak to another person for days, but he liked the quiet. He liked the sound of wind moving through the dry grass. He liked the feeling of the wide land, stretching in every direction. What he did not expect on that warm evening was to meet anyone at all, especially not 3 strangers who would change his life in ways he could not imagine. As his horse climbed a small rocky rise, Elias saw something strange in the distance. At first, he thought it might be a fallen animal. The shape was still and dark against the pale sand. But as he came closer, he noticed movement slow, careful movement, as if someone was struggling. Elias pulled his horse to a stop and shaded his eyes with his hand. Now he could see clearly. A horse lay on its side, breathing but unable to stand. Beside it were 3 young women, each dressed in traditional Apache clothing. They looked tired, dusty, and worried. Elias felt a quick pull in his chest. Out here, far from towns or help, anyone in trouble was in real danger. He guided his horse closer, making sure to move slowly so he would not frighten them. The sisters watched him with caution, their eyes sharp and alert. They did not know who he was or why he was there, and he did not know them either. For a moment, no one spoke. Then the oldest sister stepped slightly forward. She held herself with quiet strength, though her face showed signs of exhaustion. Elias stopped a safe distance away and spoke in a calm voice. "Evening," he said gently. "Do you need help?" The sisters exchanged quick looks, as if silently deciding whether they could trust him. Finally, the oldest nodded. "Our horse collapsed," she said softly. "We have been walking since morning. The heat was strong, and we could not find enough water." Elias glanced at the horse. Its sides rose and fell heavily. It needed rest and water. Maybe more than that. He also saw how tired the sisters were. The desert sun had not been kind to them. Elias knew well how the land tested anyone who traveled it. He moved slowly and offered his canteen. "You can drink this," he said. "I have more back at my ranch." The youngest sister hesitated, but the middle one carefully accepted the canteen. She took a small sip and passed it to the others. Their movements were polite and respectful, and Elias sensed they were raised with strong traditions. They did not waste a drop. After they drank, the oldest sister turned to him again. "Thank you," she said. "We are far from our home. We were visiting our aunt's family when our horse became weak." Elias nodded. "My ranch is not far. Maybe 30 minutes by horse. You can rest there, and we can figure out what to do about your horse in the morning." The sisters looked surprised. Out here, strangers were not always kind. But Elias spoke plainly and showed no sign of pressure or demand. He simply offered help because he felt it was the right thing to do. Life in the desert taught him that kindness could save lives. The oldest sister finally said, "I am Nayeli." She pointed to the others. "This is Siali. And this is Tansa." Elias smiled slightly. "Elias Ward," he said. They gathered their few belongings, and Elias helped them as gently as possible. He guided the sisters onto his horse, letting them ride while he walked beside them. He knew they needed the rest more than he did. As they traveled toward the ranch, the sky shifted from orange to deep purple. Shadows stretched long across the land, and a soft wind brushed against their faces. The air grew cooler, making the journey easier. For a time, no one spoke. The sisters were tired, and Elias did not want to push them to talk. But after a while, the youngest sister, Tanza asked quietly, "Do you live alone?" "Yes," Elias answered. "It's a small ranch. Enough for me and the cattle." Siali studied him carefully. "You choose to live far from everyone?" Elias thought for a moment. "I suppose I do. The land is hard, but it gives back what you put into it. And I like the quiet." Nayeli nodded, understanding his words more deeply than the others. "The land teaches us many things," she said. "Strength, patience, and respect." Elias glanced at her, impressed by her thoughtful tone. He felt a sense of peace walking beside them, even though he had known them for less than an hour. Maybe it was because they shared something important. The land shaped them both, though in different ways. When they reached his ranch, the sky was nearly dark. Elias lit a lantern and guided them inside. The house was simple, a single room with a small bed, a wooden table, and a fireplace that had warmed many cold nights. It was not much, but it was safe, and it was home. The sisters looked around with quiet curiosity. Elias could see how tired they were, how relieved they felt to be out of the open desert. He quickly fetched water and placed it on the table. "You can rest here," he said. "I'll take care of the fire and bring blankets." The sisters thanked him again, their voices soft but sincere. Elias felt no discomfort in helping them. He had always believed that when someone needed aid, there was no reason to hesitate. As they settled in, the firelight flickered across the walls, painting warm shapes in the dim room. Elias felt a surprising calmness settle over him. He had not shared his home with anyone in a long time, but somehow, the presence of the sisters did not feel strange. It felt right. The night grew quiet except for the steady crackle of the fire and the soft breathing of the tired travelers. And though none of them said it aloud, all four felt that fate had brought them together at exactly the moment they needed each other most. The soft glow of the fire warmed the small ranch house as Elias placed another piece of wood onto the flames. The desert night had a way of becoming cold very quickly, but the warmth inside the room kept the air gentle and calm. The three Apache sisters, Nayeli, Siali, and Tansa, were sitting at the small wooden table, slowly sipping the warm tea Elias had prepared for them. Their faces looked more relaxed now. The dryness in their eyes had faded, replaced with a quiet sense of safety. Elias moved with steady, respectful care. He did not want the sisters to feel uncomfortable in someone else's home, especially after a long day of struggle. He handed them blankets one by one. Even though the room was simple and small, he wanted them to know they were welcome. "It is not a big place," Elias said softly, "but it will keep the night cold away." Nayeli gave him a kind smile. "Your home is peaceful," she said. "We are thankful." Elias felt a small warmth in his chest at her words. He wasn't used to compliments. He wasn't used to having guests either. The house had always been quiet, because he had always lived alone. But tonight, the soft voices and gentle movements of the three sisters made the place feel different. It felt alive in a warm and grounding way. Outside, the wind began to pick up, brushing against the wooden walls. The night had fully settled in, and the open desert was now a wide blanket of darkness. Traveling in such conditions would have been dangerous, especially for people already tired. Elias was relieved they had reached the ranch safely. The sisters quietly discussed something among themselves in their native language. Their voices blended like soft music, filled with a mixture of gratitude and thoughtfulness. After a moment, Nayeli turned back to Elias. "We know your bed is the only proper place to sleep here," she said. "We can share it among ourselves. You do not need to sleep outside or give up your comfort." Elias shook his head gently. "It's fine," he said. "I usually sleep near the fire when nights get cold. I'm used to it. The three of you should have the bed. You need the rest." But Siali stood and touched the wooden frame of the small bed. "We are sisters," she said softly. "We have shared sleeping space all our lives. It is not unusual for us. You have already done more than enough. Let us rest together here. And you rest wherever you are most comfortable." Elias paused. He could see they were sincere. Their offer was not strange to them. It was simply practical. They lived close to the land, to family, and to shared responsibilities. They understood unity in ways many people did not. "All right," Elias said finally. "If you're sure." "We are," Tanza said with a small smile. As the sisters prepared for sleep, Elias stepped outside for a moment to check the surroundings. The moonlight washed the desert in pale silver, making the quiet fields shine softly. He listened to the distant sounds, the chirping of night insects, the whispering wind, the soft creaking of dry branches. Everything seemed calm. He thought about the horse they had left near the path earlier that evening. He would check on it at sunrise. If it could recover, great. If not, he would help the sisters find another way home. For now, the animal was safe under the shade of a small structure near the corral, and Elias had given it water before returning inside. When he stepped back into the house, the firelight greeted him with warmth. The sisters had settled into the bed comfortably, sharing blankets and resting their heads close together like three young birds in a nest. Their breathing was slow and peaceful. Elias felt relieved to see them resting properly after such a difficult day. He laid out his own blanket near the fire, stretching his legs and feeling the softness of the floor beneath him. It wasn't the most comfortable place, but he had slept there many times before. As he lay down, he noticed how different the room felt with others inside. Usually the silence echoed around him, but now, even with the quiet breathing of the sisters, the room felt fuller, warmer, more human. Elias closed his eyes, expecting sleep to come easily. But his mind wandered instead. He thought about how rare it was to meet people out in the desert at all, much less three sisters traveling together. He wondered what brought them so far from their home. He wondered what stories they carried with them, what dreams or challenges they faced. He didn't want to ask too many questions too soon. Trust had to grow slowly. He turned onto his side, looking at the ceiling beams above. Shadows danced across the wood as the fire moved. He listened carefully. The sisters whispered softly to one another, their voices almost floating in the air. He couldn't understand their language, but he could feel the closeness between them. It reminded him of something he had nearly forgotten, what it felt like to have family nearby. It had been many years since he'd known that feeling. After a while, the whispers faded. The crackling fire settled into a steady rhythm. Elias finally drifted into sleep. The night passed quietly, with the gentle sounds of nature settling outside. The moon traveled slowly across the sky until it disappeared behind the mountains. Warm morning light eventually touched the horizon, but the world inside the ranch house stayed peaceful and still. Elias woke first. He pushed himself up quietly, careful not to disturb anyone. The sisters were still asleep, wrapped in blankets, their faces calm and resting. He watched them for a brief moment, not out of curiosity, but with a sense of responsibility. He wanted to make sure they were all right. Then he stood, stretched his back, and stepped outside to greet the fresh morning air. The desert always looked different in early light. Softer, cooler, and a little more hopeful. He fed the chickens, checked on the water barrels, and then walked toward the corral where the sister's horse was resting. The horse lifted its head slowly. It was tired, but no longer as weak as before. Elias filled a small container with water and placed it near the animal. "You're going to be all right," he said quietly. "Just need time." He returned to the house, where he found Nayeli already awake, sitting at the table with a calm smile. "Good morning," she greeted him. "Morning," Elias said, returning the smile. "I didn't want to wake you." "You didn't," she said. "We are simply not used to sleeping so deeply. Your home is peaceful." Siali and Tansa soon joined them, stretching their arms and rubbing their eyes. Elias prepared a simple breakfast: warm bread, dried fruit, and fresh water. The sisters thanked him many times, each in their own gentle way. As they ate, their conversation grew easier. They asked about his ranch, his cattle, and how he lived alone. Elias shared simple stories: how he moved to the desert seeking peace, how he learned to care for animals, how he came to understand the land. In return, The sisters began to share small pieces of their own lives, family traditions, travels, and the lessons they learned growing up close to the earth. Time moved smoothly that morning. The air was filled with soft voices, gentle laughter, and a growing sense of mutual trust. The sisters felt safe, and Elias felt something he had not felt in a long time. Companionship. He did not know what challenges would come next. But for this moment, the small ranch, once so quiet and lonely, felt like a place of connection, kindness, and unexpected friendship. And none of them knew that the peaceful morning was only the calm before a difficult day ahead. Morning light slowly spread across the desert, touching every rock and every patch of dry grass with a soft golden glow. Elias stepped outside after breakfast to check the fence near the corral. The three sisters followed him, curious about ranch life and wanting to help wherever they could. Even though they were guests, they did not sit idle. Their culture taught them the value of shared work, and the ranch offered many small tasks that needed gentle hands. Tansa helped feed the chickens, laughing softly when they gathered around her feet. Siali carried water carefully from the barrel, making sure none spilled. Nayeli inspected the horse that had collapsed the day before. The animal now stood weakly but with more strength than before. She stroked its head and spoke to it in a low, soothing tone. Elias noticed how the horse calmed under her touch. "You have a way with animals," he said. Nayeli nodded. "Our people learn early how to understand them. They speak with their movements." The ranch felt alive in a new way. Elias had forgotten how good it felt to have helping hands and gentle voices nearby. The morning passed quickly as they worked together, and the quiet desert seemed brighter than usual. But just before noon, the calm atmosphere began to shift. Elias was tightening a loose fence board when he heard distant footsteps on the hard earth, many footsteps. He glanced up, shading his eyes from the sun. In the distance, several men were walking toward the ranch. Their shapes grew clearer as they approached. They did not look angry, but their faces were serious, and they moved with purpose. The sisters noticed them too. Their expressions changed slightly, not fearful, but careful. People traveling as a group rarely arrived without reason. Elias wiped his hands on his trousers and walked forward, wanting to greet the visitors before they came too close. The men slowed as they reached the edge of the open yard. They were ranch hands from a nearby settlement, people Elias had seen from time to time at the trading post but did not know well. The tallest among them stepped forward with a polite nod. "Morning, Elias," he said. "Didn't expect to see visitors on your land." "Oh," Elias kept his tone friendly. "Morning." These three young women were traveling yesterday when their horse fainted from the heat. I brought them here to rest until the animal got stronger. The men exchanged looks, silent, but not hostile. They simply seemed uncertain. It was not common to see guests out in this part of the desert, especially people who lived by different traditions. The land often made people careful, sometimes overly so. The tall man cleared his throat. "We saw tracks near the ridge," he explained. "Didn't know who they belonged to, so we came to check everything was all right. Long distances can be risky. We just wanted to make sure no one was lost or in need." "Well," Elias nodded. "They're safe here. No trouble at all." Nayeli stepped forward with a respectful tilt of her head. "Thank you for checking," she said calmly. "We were on our way home when our horse grew too tired. We will leave as soon as it has enough strength." Her tone carried dignity and clarity. The men relaxed a little at her composed manner. Siali added, "We are very thankful to Elias for giving us shelter." The men listened politely, but Elias sensed they still had questions. Not hostile ones, just the kind that rose when people met others they didn't know well. One of the younger men, with a thoughtful look on his face, asked gently, "Is everything fine with your horse? We have an extra wagon nearby. If you need help getting back home, we could offer it." Nayeli's eyes softened. "That is kind of you. We appreciate the offer. But our horse is doing better. With rest, it will be ready to travel." The men looked at Elias for confirmation. He nodded. "It's true. She's gaining strength." There was a pause. A quiet breeze passed through the open space, making the dry grass bend slightly. No one raised their voice, and no one acted in a threatening way. It was simply a moment where two different groups tried to understand each other across unfamiliar ground. Finally, the tall man spoke again. "Well, Mr. Ward, if you say everything is fine, then we trust your word. We didn't come to cause any worry. We only wanted to be sure everyone was safe." Elias appreciated the calm explanation. "Thank you," he said sincerely. "Your concern is welcome." To lighten the moment, Tansa stepped up with a bright smile. "Would you like some water before you leave? It's a long walk back." The offer surprised the men, but in a pleasant way. One of them chuckled softly. "That's kind of you. But we should be going. We've got our own work waiting." The mood shifted into something warmer. The tension naturally dissolved when both sides realized there was no misunderstanding and no reason for concern. Before leaving, the men gave a final respectful nod to the sisters and to Elias. "If you need anything," the tall man said, "we're not far." "Thank you," Elias replied. Once the men walked away across the open plain, the ranch felt quiet again. Elias turned to the sisters, who were standing close together. "Sorry if that made you uneasy," he said. "People sometimes get curious when they see tracks they don't recognize." Nayeli shook her head kindly. "You handled everything with calm. There is no need to apologize." Siali added, "Sometimes people just want to make sure everything is safe." "It is natural," Tansa grinned. "I think they were more nervous than we were." The three sisters laughed softly, and Elias found himself laughing too. The tension faded quickly, replaced by a comfortable sense of understanding. It felt good to know that even challenging moments could pass peacefully when handled with patience and respect. The afternoon sun climbed high, warming the earth. Elias invited the sisters back inside for midday rest. While they settled at the table, he poured cool water into clay cups and placed them in front of them. They drank slowly, grateful for the relief. "You spoke very calmly to them," Elias said to Nayeli. "That is the way of our family," she replied. "Peace grows when we speak with peace." Peace. Her words stayed with him. He remembered them even as he went outside again to check the horse. The animal blinked slowly when he approached, as if already feeling more alive than before. Elias brushed its neck gently. "You've caused quite a day's excitement," he murmured with a smile. When he returned to the house, the sisters were helping tidy the space without being asked. They folded blankets, swept dust from the floor, and arranged small items neatly along the table. Their presence made the home feel cared for in a way Elias had not experienced in years. Later in the afternoon, they all sat beneath the shade of a tall mesquite tree near the ranch. The sky was a bright, endless blue, and a soft breeze brushed past them. Elias told stories about the early days of his ranch, how he built the fence by hand, how he learned to read the sky for weather changes, and how the desert had taught him patience. In return, the sisters shared stories from their childhood. They told him about the clear streams near their village, the songs their grandmother used to sing, and the lessons their father taught them about listening to the land. As they spoke, Elias felt something he had not felt in a long time. Connection. Not the temporary kind, but something deeper, like a thread weaving between them, creating a quiet bond made of trust and simple kindness. By evening, the earlier arrival of the men felt like a distant memory. The day ended in peace, filled with gentle conversation, shared work, and growing friendship. The ranch, once quiet and solitary, now seemed warmer than ever. None of them knew yet that the next day would bring new challenges, but also new understanding. The sun rose gently the next morning, spreading soft light across the ranch like a warm blanket. Elias stepped outside early, as he always did, and breathed in the cool air. The desert was quiet, except for the distant call of a bird welcoming the new day. He stretched his arms and walked toward the corral to check on the horse first thing. To his surprise, Nayeli was already there, standing beside the horse with her hand resting on its neck. She had braided her hair for the day and looked calm, as if she had been awake for hours. "You rise early," Elias said with a soft smile. "So does the land," she replied. "The morning is when everything listens." The horse lifted its head, its ears turning toward Elias. He stepped closer and saw that the animal's strength had returned much more than the day before. Its eyes looked brighter, and it stood more steadily on its legs. "It's doing better," Elias said. "Much better." "Yes," Nayeli agreed. "We may be able to leave tomorrow if all goes well." Elias felt something gentle and strange in his chest. He was happy the sisters would soon be able to travel safely. Yet he also felt something else, a soft sadness at the thought of their departure. The ranch had changed in their presence. It felt less lonely, less empty. But he kept those thoughts to himself. Their home was waiting for them, and he wanted nothing more than for them to return safely. Soon, Siali and Tansa joined them, cheerful and bright as the morning sun. They gathered around the horse, speaking softly to it and checking its condition. The sisters moved with natural harmony, each one understanding exactly what the others were thinking without needing many words. After tending to the horse, they all returned inside, where Elias prepared breakfast. The sisters insisted on helping, and the kitchen filled with the sound of light, laughter, and small conversations. Tansa mixed ingredients with enthusiasm. Siali carefully arranged plates. Nayeli poured water into clay cups. The simple morning tasks felt like a shared dance. Once they finished eating, Elias suggested a small walk around the land. He wanted to show them the parts of the ranch they hadn't seen yet, the stream that ran after heavy rains, the small patch of wildflowers that somehow grew even in the dry desert, and the small hill that offered a beautiful view of the open horizon. The sisters agreed happily. They walked together across the soft, sandy ground. The sun warmed their backs, and a gentle breeze moved their hair. Elias explained how he had rebuilt the old barn himself, how he kept track of the cattle, and how he learned to understand when a storm was coming just by smelling the air. Siali listened with interest. "You live alone, but you never sound lonely when you talk about your work." Elias looked at the sky thoughtfully. "The land keeps me company," he said. "Every day it teaches something new. But having company these past days has reminded me that people bring a different kind of warmth." His words made the sisters smile. They walked a little farther until they reached a small hill. From the top, the entire valley spread out before them, shining under the bright sun. "It is beautiful," Nayeli said softly. "It is peaceful," Siali added. "It feels like a dream," Tansa whispered. Elias watched their faces and felt grateful he could share this moment with them. The desert was harsh, but it also held beauty for those who knew where to look. They spent some time sitting on the hill, enjoying the quiet air and the wide open sky. The sisters told Elias more stories about their village, how children played near the river, how elders painted symbols of wisdom, how families joined hands during celebrations. Their words painted pictures in the air, colorful moments full of life and tradition. Elias listened with deep interest. "Your home sounds warm," he said gently. "It is," Nayeli said. "But the world is big, and meeting kind people on the journey makes it even warmer." Tansa nodded eagerly. "You helped us when we needed help the most. That is something we will always remember." Elias felt a soft warmth in his heart. He had helped them without expecting anything in return, but hearing their gratitude made the moment feel complete. As the afternoon sun climbed higher, they made their way back to the ranch. There was still much work to do. Elias needed to repair a few loose boards on the barn, and the sisters offered to help without hesitation. They worked together easily. Siali held the boards steady, while Elias hammered them into place. Nayeli inspected the ground near the corral, pointing out small things that could be improved. Tansa collected loose ropes and neatly arranged them. The work did not feel tiring. It felt peaceful, almost like a shared rhythm of cooperation. None of them spoke constantly, yet the silence was pleasant and comforting. When the tasks were done, Elias began preparing a simple evening meal inside the house. The sisters sat around the table, weaving small patterns from dried grass they found near the ranch. Their fingers moved gracefully, creating shapes that looked like tiny pieces of art. "What are those?" Elias asked gently. "Treasures," Tansa said proudly. Small gifts we leave behind for people we care about. Elias paused, touched by the thought. As they ate dinner, the sky outside turned orange and pink, then slowly faded into a deep, soft blue. The desert night returned with its gentle coolness. The sisters seemed more comfortable in the ranch now than they had been on the first night. They moved easily within the space, as if they had always been welcome there. After dinner, they all sat by the fire again. The crackling flames cast warm shadows across the room, and everyone felt calm. Elias told them a story about the time a stray dog had wandered onto the ranch and stayed for months, only to leave one morning as suddenly as it had arrived. The story made the sisters laugh softly. In return, Nayeli shared a tale about her grandmother teaching her to listen to the wind. She said the wind carries the voices of the land, she explained. If you sit quietly, you might hear something meant for you. Elias looked into the fire, thinking about her words. Maybe the land had spoken to him too, guiding him to the sisters when they needed help. The desert had a way of bringing people together when they least expected it. The long day eventually grew quiet. The fire softened into glowing embers. Elias brought out blankets, and the sisters arranged themselves on the bed just as they had before, sharing space comfortably. Their soft whispers filled the room for a moment, before settling into peaceful sleep. Elias lay down near the fire again, listening to the gentle breathing of the sisters. He felt calm, grateful, and oddly complete. Helping them had not changed his life in grand ways, but it had brought warmth to a place that had been too quiet for too long. As he drifted into sleep, he wondered what tomorrow would bring. The sisters would soon begin their journey home, but he hoped their time together would leave a lasting memory, something they would all carry back into their separate worlds. He didn't yet know that tomorrow would mark a turning point for all of them, a moment that would shape their bond even more deeply than the days before. The next morning arrived with a calm stillness that felt different from the days before. The soft golden light touched the edges of the ranch buildings, and the air carried a cool freshness that hinted at the beginning of change. Elias woke early, as he always did, but today he felt a quiet heaviness inside him. It was the day the sisters might return home, and although he knew it was right, a small part of him wished their stay could last a little longer. He stood up, folding his blanket neatly, and looked toward the bed where the three sisters still rested. They looked peaceful, wrapped in the gentle morning light. Their presence had filled the house with warmth for the past few days, and the thought of the ranch becoming silent again made him pause. A moment later, Nayeli stirred and opened her eyes. She noticed Elias watching the fire and offered a gentle smile. "Good morning," she whispered. "Morning," he replied softly. Soon, Siali and Tansa woke as well, stretching and smiling sleepily. Elias prepared a simple breakfast, and the sisters helped set the table. Moving in their usual harmony, they ate quietly at first, each one aware that the day carried an important purpose. After breakfast, the sisters stepped outside to check on their horse. Elias followed a few steps behind, watching as Nayeli gently touched the animal's neck. Checking its strength, the horse stood tall today, with steady legs and a clear, calm gaze. It breathed deeply, as if ready to continue its journey. "It seems strong enough," Nayeli said. "Yes," Siali agreed. "It can travel now." Tanza brushed her hand along the horse's back. "We can go home," Elias nodded, but his heart felt a soft ache. He didn't want to hold them back, so he simply said, "I'm glad it recovered." The sisters thanked him again with kind expressions. They knew how much care he had given them, from offering water in the desert to giving them shelter on the ranch. His generosity had made their difficult journey much easier. They returned inside the house to gather their belongings, although they didn't have much, only small pouches, simple blankets, and the braided grass patterns they had woven the day before. Before leaving, the sisters stood together with Elias in the center of the room. "We want to give you something," Tansa said excitedly. She held out a small woven charm made from dried grass and colorful threads. It was shaped like a tiny sun, with soft rays stretching outward. Siali handed him a similar charm shaped like a small leaf. Nayeli offered one shaped like a gentle wave. "These are symbols of thanks," Nayeli explained. "The sun represents guidance, the leaf represents growth, and the wave represents calm strength. We want you to have them." Elias accepted the gifts carefully, touched by their meaning. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I'll keep them safe." Tansa looked up at him with bright eyes. "They will bring good days to your home. And remind you of us," Siali added with a soft smile. Elias nodded slowly. "I won't forget." The sisters stepped outside, preparing their horse for travel. Elias helped secure the saddle and tightened the straps gently, making sure everything was perfect. The desert breeze moved lightly around them, carrying the smell of dry earth and distant sage. When everything was ready, the sisters gathered near Elias one last time. They did not rush. They simply stood together, sharing a peaceful silence that held more meaning than words. Nayeli spoke first. "Your kindness will stay with us," she said. "Wherever we go, we will remember that in the wide desert, a stranger offered help without asking anything in return. You were never strangers to me," Elias said softly. "Not after the first night." Siali looked around the ranch, her eyes warm. "Your home is a good place. May it stay safe," Tansa added, "and may you never feel alone again." Their sincerity touched Elias deeply. He felt the truth of their words settle inside him like warm sand. He had lived alone for many years, believing that loneliness was simply part of life on the desert. But the sisters had shown him something different, how the smallest moments of shared work, shared laughter, and shared rest could bring light into even the quietest corners of a home. The sisters mounted their horse carefully. The animal stood strong and ready, its ears alert and its breath steady. Nayeli took the reins, and the three of them looked down at Elias from their place on horseback. "Thank you," they said together, each voice gentle in its own way. Elias stepped back, giving them room. "Safe journey," he said. "The land knows your steps." Nayeli nodded, touched by his choice of words. Slowly, she guided the horse forward, and the three sisters began their journey across the open desert. Elias watched them until their shapes became small against the horizon, like three bright birds flying toward the sun. The ranch became quiet again. Elias walked back inside the house, which now felt emptier, but not in a sad way, more in a peaceful, thoughtful way. The woven charms lay on the table, glowing softly in the sunlight. He picked them up gently and hung them on the wall where he could see them every day. For the rest of the morning, Elias worked around the ranch, feeding the animals, checking the fences, and cleaning the barn. Everything felt normal again. But there was something new inside him. A sense of warmth that stayed, like an ember that didn't fade. Later that afternoon, as he stood on the small hill near the ranch, he looked out across the wide desert and thought about everything that had happened. The sisters had brought color into his quiet days. They had shared stories, helped with chores, and filled the ranch with laughter. They had shown him that even in a lonely life, unexpected friendships could appear like sudden rain in the dry season. Elias realized something important. Kindness always returned, even if in gentle ways. He had helped them because it felt right. And in return, they had given him something priceless: connection. The land around him felt different now, as if it carried echoes of their voices, their footsteps, and their soft laughter. Days passed, and Elias returned to the rhythm of ranch work. But he was no longer the same man he had been before their arrival. Now, he looked at the world with more hope, more patience, and a deeper understanding of how people could touch each other's lives in quiet but powerful ways. Every now and then, he would climb the hill and look toward the direction the sisters had gone. He imagined them reaching their home safely, sharing stories about their journey and the rancher who had helped them without hesitation. He wondered if their village talked about him as someone who gave shelter on a difficult day. Weeks later, as Elias repaired the fence near the corral, he heard the sound of soft footsteps. He turned and saw three familiar figures approaching from the distance. Nayeli, Siali, and Tansa were walking toward the ranch, their faces bright with smiles. They had returned. Not because they needed help this time, but because friendship had taken root in the desert, and some bonds did not fade with time. Elias felt his heart lift with quiet joy. The ranch no longer felt like a lonely place. It had become a meeting ground of trust, kindness, and memories that would continue growing. And from that day forward, the rancher and the three Apache sisters remained connected not by chance, but by a shared moment of humanity that had blossomed into lasting friendship across the open desert.